I have been given the lovely task of presenting this year's Henry Zumach From Fundamentalist Religion Award, catchily known as the FFRF FFFR Award. It's endowed by our member and state church activist, Henry Zumach. Hank couldn't be here today, but he's well known to FFRF as one of our plaintiffs in FFRF's second successful iteration of a lawsuit that was challenging the Ten Commandments monument in a public park in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Every year since 2017, Hank Zumach has put at least $100,000 into this fund, which has now grown to over $1 million. He created the fund with FFRF so that the fruits of this fund can annually recognize and reward major activism by allied organizations that take a stand against religious intolerance and bigotry, and that work to keep it out of our laws and our social policy. The award amount started at $10,000. It has quickly grown, thanks to Hank's generosity, to $50,000. Recipients in the past have included Americans United, the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, and the Human Rights Campaign. This year's recipient is the Center for Reproductive Rights. Yes. It's a global human rights organization of attorneys and advocates working to ensure reproductive rights are protected in law as fundamental human rights. The Center for Reproductive Rights has secured groundbreaking victories in national courts, UN committees, and regional human rights bodies. Here to accept the Henry Zumach Freedom from Fundamentalist Religion Award is Nancy Northup, the president and CEO of the Center for Reproductive Rights. Nancy's no stranger to FFRF. She received the FFRF Forward Award in 2019. That is reserved for individuals who are moving society forward. Nancy graduated magna cum laude from Brown University, got her JD from Columbia Law School. She's held adjunct appointments at NYU Law School and Columbia Law School. Previously was the founding director of the Democracy Program at the Brennan Center for Justice. With the perilous state of abortion rights here in the United States, with reproductive rights targeted by Christian nationalists, we at the Freedom from Religion Foundation, as well as Henry Zumach, are grateful for the cutting-edge legal work of the Center for Reproductive Rights. So here to accept the $50,000 Zumach Award on behalf of the Center for Reproductive Rights, please welcome Nancy Northup.
Good morning. Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here with you, and such an honor on behalf of the Center for Reproductive Rights to be accepting the Henry Zumach Award for Freedom from Religious Fundamentalism. I am delighted and amused, as I was the first time I had an opportunity to address this conference. Delighted because I am a fierce advocate for the separation of church and state. And amused because, well, I'm really a big church lady. I have attended church all my life. That is where you will find me on almost every Sunday morning. But I am a church lady who is passionate about the separation of church and state, about how our freedoms, and importantly in the work I do, the freedom to make decisions about our own bodies depend on it. So I am grateful for this award and for the passion that you all bring to protecting our fundamental liberties. I have to say, I'm already reminded this morning of what I thought when I was here the last time, which is you are not only an irreverent crowd, you are a really fun crowd. So it is so good to be with you and the energy that you have here. Also, no one told me I was following the godless gospel singers, which is a lot to come on top of. They were wonderful, wouldn't they? Let's give them another round of applause. Love them. As you heard, our mission at the Center for Reproductive Rights is to ensure that reproductive rights are protected in law as fundamental human rights by governments around the world. Today, I'm going to speak to you about the state of reproductive rights and specifically about abortion rights in this country. I can't think of a more relevant place to be speaking to you from than right here in South Carolina. This state has one of the most extreme abortion bans in the country. It bans abortion after 6 weeks, which is before most women know that they're pregnant. For some South Carolina lawmakers, this is not even enough. It's not extreme enough. They have recently introduced a bill banning abortion entirely, no exceptions for rape, incest, or fatal fetal abnormalities. It would equate abortion with homicide, meaning that anyone who helps a woman to access an abortion, be it a doctor, a family member, even a clergy member, could face felony charges up to 30 years in prison. If that sounds extreme, it's because it is. And these are the stakes, not just for South Carolinians, but for all Americans. So, how did we get here? In June of 2022, the center had a case before the Supreme Court called Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. The case challenged a Mississippi law banning abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. That was a flat-out violation of the decision in Roe versus Wade, which of course in 1973 recognized abortion as a right that all women could access prior to fetal viability. And in the Dobbs decision, the Supreme Court did something that it had never done before. It took away a settled constitutional individual right. Now, you might be thinking, wait, the Supreme Court reverses itself in constitutional decisions, it seems, with frequency. But prior decisions by the Supreme Court in this regard were to extend liberties. You think about the decision in Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, where the court rejected its prior ruling upholding racial segregation. Or the decision in Lawrence versus Texas in 2003, when the court rejected its prior ruling of upholding the criminalization of same-sex relationships. But what they had not done before, until June of 2022, was taken away a settled constitutional individual liberty that had been guaranteed to the American people. And that is exactly what the Dobbs ruling did. It stripped away the right to make decisions about our own bodies, our own health, and therefore our futures. It was the single biggest setback for women's rights in American history. And we can't let that be forgotten. I think sometimes the mistake that we make is to move right on after the Supreme Court guts, right, our rights and with decisions, whether it is cases taking away the protections for campaign finance reform or voting rights. We can't let these decisions be forgotten. We have to be as dogged in making America remember how bad these decisions are, as our opponents do. Dobbs should be relegated to the trash heap of notoriously unjust Supreme Court rulings. So I'm going to ask all of you to make sure you let everyone know that. Now let's talk about the injustice that has been unleashed in the years since that ruling in the Dobbs case. In the wake of Dobbs, more than a dozen states banned abortion entirely or imposed bans like this 6-week ban in South Carolina. And again, that is so early that it might as well be a total ban. Thankfully, some of these extreme bans have been blocked by courts in litigation, including litigation brought by the Center for Reproductive Rights. But here you see a map of where the total bans and 6-week bans are today. And as you can see from this map, if you live in certain parts of the country, particularly in vast swaths of the South, you are literally locked in state after state after state where abortion is banned. And let me be clear about what banned really means. It means that those states have written into law that abortion is a crime, punishable by sentences up to life in prison. This has been the harsh reality since 2022. And these abortion bans have inflicted deep and terrible pain on people who are living in these states, and especially people of color, people living in rural areas, those struggling to make ends meet, and others who already face barriers to health care. And now, since January 20th of this year, we face the possibility that the United States government will use the immense power of the Department of Justice to come after abortion providers, their staff, and anyone who has been helping women to access abortion care in banned states. I know about this immense power because I started my legal career as a prosecutor in the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. And it sends chills down my spine to think that the power of the DOJ could be turned on doctors for providing health care to patients. We have already seen this at the state level. I want to tell you about our client, Maria Rojas, in Texas. Maria is a talented midwife who, until March of this year, was running a network of clinics in the Houston area. Her clinics provided comprehensive maternal and family health care, from prenatal monitoring and routine checkups to vaccinations, home visits, and hands-on care throughout pregnancy and childbirth. Maria's clinics primarily served low-income, uninsured, and Spanish-speaking communities. They were trusted and much-needed community spaces. And it's important to note, these clinics were not abortion clinics. Maria is a midwife. Her job and practice was about helping women deliver babies. But in March, Maria was pulled over by the police in Waller County, Texas. They accused her of attempting to perform illegal abortions, a crime in Texas that carries a sentence of up to 99 years in prison. They put Maria in jail that day. On October 8th, the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, escalated his scare campaign, arresting 8 people allegedly linked to Maria and branding them in a press release as a cabal of abortion-loving radicals. These aggressive tactics achieve their aim even if everyone is ultimately found to be not guilty, because the power to investigate itself when you make something a crime is the power to destroy. Our lawyers rushed to Maria's aid. We represent her in the civil case that Texas has filed to shut down the clinics. Our lawyers met with Maria in jail, and working closely with her criminal counsel, we did get her out, and now we will continue to fight these unjust charges against her. It is at the center's top priority at this moment to defend and protect abortion, to protect patients, providers, and helpers. We are fighting every day for women like Maria, and thankfully, we do that work with another factor that has been at play to support Americans who live in banned states. So I want to turn our attention to that. I want to turn our attention to something that has revolutionized abortion care and made the post-Roe world very different from pre-Roe America. This revolution in abortion care is medication abortion. So, what is medication abortion? It's abortion by 2 pills, mifepristone and misoprostol. They were both approved by the FDA for use together 25 years ago. Millions of women have used it worldwide, and study after study after study after study show that medication abortion is safe and effective. The pills can be taken at home to end a pregnancy up to 10 weeks by the FDA's regulations. No doctor's office, no clinic, just medical care on your own terms with a healthcare professional, just a phone call or a computer screen away. So, let me stop and ask you a question. What percentage do you think of abortions in the United States are done via medication abortion? What's your guess? Well, it's 63%, which is very high compared to where it was just some years ago. That number has been increasing year over year, which means that more people have been able to end their pregnancies safely and conveniently and privately. And that is what many women in states with abortion bans are doing right now. Medication abortion has become nothing less than a lifeline in post-Roe America. It's the one thing that is standing between women and the full force of these criminal abortion laws. Imagine a woman who is sitting at her kitchen table in a state with an abortion ban. Her local clinic closed 3 years ago after the Dobbs ruling. The nearest clinic is now over 200 miles away. She can't take time off from work, can't leave her children, and doesn't have the money anyway to travel out of state. So she opens her phone or her computer and finds a trusted abortion provider online, out of state. A few days later, a small plain package arrives in the mail. Inside are the 2 medications approved by the FDA the same ones that have been used safely by millions of women for over 25 years. In the privacy of her home, she takes the pill and ends her pregnancy safely. Plenty of people are living this story that I've just told you. Around 10,000 people a month get abortion pills by mail in states where there are abortion bans. Last year, 1 in 4 abortions in the US was a result of someone receiving abortion pills in the mail. Before the fall of Roe, as I said, right now it's 1 in 4. Before the fall of Roe, it was 1 in 20. That tells you something about what's going on. And this availability of medication abortion enrages anti-abortion extremists. That's why they are looking for every way they can to shut it down, both in banned states, but also nationwide. Earlier this year, Dr. Maggie Carpenter of New York became the first doctor known to be criminally charged for providing abortion pills to a patient in a state with an abortion ban. Dr. Carpenter has been indicted in the state of Louisiana. Now, fortunately, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, has rejected Louisiana's request to extradite Dr. Carpenter. And Governor Hochul is able to do that because New York, like many other states that believe in the right to abortion, passed a shield law after Roe versus Wade was overturned. This shield law makes clear that New York will not cooperate with criminal prosecutions or civil lawsuits coming from banned states that go after New York abortion providers. Dr. Carpenter has been very outspoken about why she is taking a stand at this critical time. And she's on the program at this conference today at 4:30 in the afternoon. So you all need to be in your seats. You need to not miss that. Now, the intimidation campaign unfortunately doesn't end with targeting doctors like Dr. Carpenter or midwives like Maria Rojas. In addition to wielding the criminal law, anti-abortion extremists are using civil lawsuits in an attempt to destroy lives. The group Texas Right to Life put out an advertisement recruiting husbands and ex-boyfriends to file lawsuits over their partner or former partner's decision to have an abortion. Friends, neighbors, family members are being dragged into court simply for having helped someone they love get the care that they need. But at the Center for Reproductive Rights, we are pushing back on these civil lawsuits and winning. For example, we represented the family member of a woman in Texas who went to Colorado to have an abortion. It was unacceptable that she had to leave her state, but it was perfectly legal for her to do so. It is illegal to leave a banned state and go to another state to get abortion care where abortion is legal. And you are allowed to have your loved ones help you do that. But they had been targeted with a wrongful death suit by her abusive ex-partner. But we were able at the Center for Reproductive Rights to get that suit dismissed. And we will keep on fighting those kind of lawsuits. Those lawsuits, the criminal cases, They have a point that they are trying to make. What they are trying to do is make providers and patients and families and anyone who's willing to help afraid. The message is clear. Anyone who dares help will be a target. But we are not afraid. We will not back down from fighting unjust laws. And I have every confidence that the people in this room feel just the same way. While I've talked so far a lot about what's happening in states with abortion bans, like the one we're gathered in today, it's also important for you all to know that the threat to abortion access, as I said before, really is nationwide. So even if you are in a state like California or Illinois or New York, who are strong protectors of abortion rights, you need to listen to this. The administration may try to ban abortion nationwide. And how could they do this? Well, let me introduce you to this man. Anthony Comstock. A law passed in 1873 was pushed by and named after Anthony Comstock, and it prohibits the mailing of so-called obscene items. The Trump administration may try to misuse the Comstock Act to ban the mailing of medication abortion. Taken to its extreme, the government could attempt to use the Comstock Act to restrict brick-and-mortar abortion access to, and even to restrict communications between patients and their doctors. This administration has been systematically implementing Project 2025. They've already accomplished half of the radical plans in that playbook. And we're not even a full year into the first year of the Trump administration. Enforcing the Comstock Act is in Project 2025. So we all need to take this threat very, very seriously. And if that weren't enough, that is not all. There is another strategy that they're using to attempt to cut off access to medication abortion nationwide. This strategy involves perverting the science-based decision-making of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. There's the building, if it's still there. In 2022, anti-abortion groups filed a lawsuit challenging the FDA's approval of mifepristone, even though it had been on the market and safely used by millions of women at that point for over 20 years. That litigation is ongoing and has now been moved from Texas to Missouri. But the case is part of a broader effort outlined in Project 2025 to undermine the FDA's science-based decisions on medication abortion. Health and Human Secretaries Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He echoed that goal of undermining the approval of medication abortion when he was running for president and said he would restrict access to mifepristone if elected. And now, under the pressure from anti-abortion groups and their political allies, the FDA is indeed reevaluating mifepristone with the clear goal of restricting access even in states where abortion remains illegal. Last week, 51 Republican senators urged Secretary Kennedy and the FDA commissioner to end telemedicine prescriptions of mifepristone everywhere, again, not just in banned states, and to suspend its distribution as an imminent hazard. We are fighting back and have filed multiple lawsuits of our own against the FDA. With those cases, we are trying to first and foremost ensure that medication abortion is not further restricted. We're also trying to figure out what is going on behind closed doors in Washington. The integrity and the processes of the FDA must not be challenged and used for political ends. What I've outlined for you today, I know, is pretty bleak, but it does reflect the harsh realities that we all need to be clear-eyed about of the state of reproductive rights, and specifically abortion rights in this country. But at the core, and we need to carry this with us, this truth remains. It is a basic right and dignity to control your body, your health, your family, and your future. And the Center for Reproductive Rights has always been and will always be there to protect these fundamental freedoms. I promise you that. I guarantee you that. And also, let's be clear, and I want you to take heart in this. The American people do not want this. In state after state after state, they have stood up to restrictions on abortion rights, and when been given the opportunity at the ballot to themselves express what they want in their state constitutions, they have said, we don't want these restrictions. And not only that, we actually want abortion rights guaranteed in our state constitutions. Take the state of Kansas. It is a deep red state. And we won a constitutional right from the Kansas Supreme Court some years ago that guaranteed very strongly, more strongly than the Supreme Court had under Roe versus Wade, the right, the constitutional right to abortion under the Kansas state constitution. And I have to say, I loved that decision because it was 180 pages long, and it did everything from quoting the Magna Carta to Abraham Lincoln. In 2022, the Kansas legislature tried to have that stripped out of the Kansas Constitution and say there is no right to abortion in the Kansas Constitution, and they sent that to the voters. And they strongly and firmly rejected the notion that they were going to vote their rights out of their Constitution. The Kansas voters said, hell no, we're going to keep it in our Constitution. And that clarity at the ballot box from voters in Kansas has been seen throughout the country, and not just in, reliable blue states like California and Vermont, who, yes, enshrined abortion rights into their state constitutions post-Roe, but also in swing states and red states. The voters, by large margins, we're talking about 57, 58%, are putting abortion rights in their constitution. They are putting the words reproductive freedom or reproductive autonomy right there in letters, right in their constitutions. And these have passed by these large margins in states like Missouri, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, Arizona, and Ohio. Americans are making it clear they want to make their own decisions about their reproductive health care. So that is where I want you to look. That is where I want you to give the strength and the optimism about what can happen in the future. Because each vote is a story of courage and conscience. Each ballot cast is a reminder that no matter how fierce the opposition, the majority of Americans do stand for reproductive freedom. And voters are not the only people who are standing up. Going back to talking about the fight over the FDA approval of mifepristone, over 600 pharmaceutical companies, including big names like Pfizer, have publicly supported the FDA's approval of medication abortion. Companies have stepped up to ensure their employees in banned states can travel to get abortions in other states where it's legal. And more people are sharing their stories, speaking out, and refusing to stay silent. And every act, big or small, is part of a wave of courage. So even as we are defending today, we are building state constitutional protections, and we have to keep working towards the ultimate goal, which is federal legislation that protects the right to access abortion care. This is possible in the not so far off distant future. We have already had the House twice in the previous Congress pass the federal right to abortion in passing the Women's Health Protection Act. The Senate had 49 supporters for this legislation. Do not let people tell you it is not possible. It is possible. And we have to make Americans realize that even if the Supreme Court has abandoned for now the recognition that abortion is a fundamental right, Congress has the power to restore it nationwide, and we need to make sure and keep talking about it and keep pushing them to do it until they do it, because we will make that a reality through congressional legislation, and I want everyone in this room to please help us do that. So what else can you do? The first thing you can do, of course, is make sure that you and your circle of supporters and friends and family know their rights. What are the reproductive health policies in your state? Who are the elected officials? Where do they stand? And do they know where you stand? So speak up. Make your support for reproductive freedom visible. Share why you care. I always say the most important thing, don't tell other people what to think. You're a bunch of free thinkers. You don't need to tell other people what to think. You don't want them telling you what to think. But do tell them why you care, why it's important to you. Use your power and your spheres of influence. That is how you are an agent for change. And I don't care what age you are. I don't care what your profession is. Everyone has a sphere of influence, so use it. I also know that people in this room are super committed. I know that you are willing to be vocal in the defense of rights. And I know that you are bold champions for freedom and justice. And that is why I am so honored to bring back to my staff the Zumach Award on behalf of the Center for Reproductive Rights. It means a lot for us to get this from you. As I said in my opening, I'm a church lady, so I hope you'll give me some grace as I close by quoting a theologian, the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. Dr. Thurman was a philosopher, theologian, Christian mystic, and an inspiration and spiritual advisor to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders. Dr. Thurman's words, which I want to share with you today, I think speak not just to his moment in history, but also to ours. When people asked him at that time, that similar time of moral reckoning for the nation, what is it that I should do? Dr. Thurman responded, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that. because what the world needs is people who have come alive. That is what this work is about. Keeping alive the belief that freedom and dignity and equality are worth fighting for. So let's go do that. Let's go do that together. And thank you. Thank you so very much.